Good evening, folks. Tonight we are going to delve into the next couple of chapters of Genesis. Had a really good day with the kids. We spent a lot of time outside playing, out and about. I went and saw the chiropractor today. It was my back hasn't felt this good in a long while. I'm going back on Thursday to do a follow-up. And then the kids are going. And yes, a little bit is still up with me. She's my night owl, so... But anyway, still a little bit earlier than what I normally do this, so I'm going to try to take on 2 chapters tonight, do 7 and 8. They kind of go together anyway, so I figure we walk through these and just get some of the technical stuff out of the way. So we're going to start here in Genesis 7, verse 1. It says, "And Jehovah said unto Noah, Come you and all your house into the ark. For you have I seen righteous before me in this generation." The ESV says, "For I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation." Why did God call Noah onto the ark? Because Noah was seen as righteous. Hey Mark, welcome. We're just getting started here with Genesis chapter 7. So this idea that in Romans 3, a lot of people go, and we talked about this last time with Genesis 6, that there isn't any righteous people anywhere, that everybody's the sinner. And the interesting thing, now that I think about it, is even at the time of the writing, Paul's writing, there are Christians, there are people in Christ. Hey Steve, welcome aboard. But he's saying there's nobody that's righteous. He's quoting Psalms. And here you have all these people who are Christians. These guys are saints. They're purified in Christ. The blood of Christ has cleansed them of their sin. These people are righteous. 1 John 3 talks about them being righteous people. And so just every time I come back to Romans 3 and the idea that Romans 3 is talking about all individuals ever, it's just an absurd interpretation of that passage. And just on the face of it, it's crazy to think of it that way. Here we have Noah. Noah was seen as righteous before God. We don't even have imputed righteousness like Abraham. This is righteousness. God saying, "I see your righteousness," and I have to conclude that Romans 3 is just hyperbole. He's quoting Psalms. Paul is speaking about nations. He's talking in generalities. He's not talking about specific individuals. And I think Noah is, at least up to this point, is a great example of a truly righteous man. And I think that's where, even when God had repented of making mankind, he sees Noah and he says, "Yeah, but Noah." And so he doesn't. So Jehovah tells Noah, "I've seen your righteousness. In all of this wicked generation, I've seen your righteousness. So come into the ark, you and your family." And then verse 2, he says, "Of every clean beast you shall take to thee by sevens, the male and his female, and of beasts that are not clean by two, the male and his female." And we've had this discussion last night. Again, this is Moses writing. This is Moses who is explaining this to some former slaves coming up out of Egypt. They would have understood the idea of clean. Would Noah have understood clean animals? We don't have any dietary laws yet. There isn't anything in Genesis prior to this that talks about clean animals and dietary laws, because they didn't eat animals up to this point. Is it the case that God brought these animals to Noah and he said, "All right, I'm going to give you some of them that are 7, and I'm going to give you some of them that are by 2s, and you're going to take all of them onto the ark"? And Noah didn't understand at the time that the 7s were what Moses would later refer to as clean animals under the law. And then we'll see in Genesis 8, when he comes off the ark, that he sacrifices some of these 7s, which makes perfect sense why God would have him take 7 instead of two, because if he comes off the ark and there's only two of them and he starts sacrificing them, they're not going to replenish the earth. So anyway, verse 3, of fowls also of the air by sevens, the male and the female, to keep seed alive upon the face of all the earth. Now this word earth here throughout this text is eretz. That's the general bigger idea of earth. It's not the land of Adam, the Adama that Cain was kicked out of. This is eretz. This is what we think more of the larger scale. And we're going to see here later that there's other terms that make this a global flood rather than just some local event that takes place. And then verse 4, for yet 7 days, in other words, in about a week's time, I will cause it to rain upon the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. So he's got 1 week. Noah's like, God's like, get on the ark. I'm bringing some animals to you. They're going to get on the ark. It's going to take about a week. It was interesting in the movie Noah. I had to watch it because I do this kind of stuff and I had to be able to compare. In the movie, that was Noah, with the help of some rock angel things, built the ark, and then all of the wicked people found out about it and came and tried to destroy it. But then all of a sudden God had a stampede of all of these animals rushing to the ark while the angel rock things threw rocks at the bad people to keep them away. And it was very epic, very fantasy. There was no truth to it whatsoever. I don't even believe that the wicked people of that day knew about the ark. There's no evidence that they knew about it. There isn't anything here in Genesis that Noah was a preacher. A lot of people talk about Noah being a preacher, trying to get people to convert. Don't see that here in Genesis. I think you just have God there with Noah. Remember, Jehovah is still walking around with mankind at this time, and I believe he's there. And it takes about a week. All of the kinds of animals come to the ark. They get on, and then the rain starts. So he says, I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and every living substance that I have made will I destroy from off of the face of the earth, the eretz. And Noah did according unto all Jehovah had commanded him. See, we see that over and over again of Noah. Noah does all that God commands. He didn't have some church traditions to follow. He didn't make up his own thing. He didn't try to improve upon God's plan. He just did everything God commanded him. That's it. And Noah was 600 years old when the flood of the waters was upon the earth. Remember, he was 500 when God started talking to him about building the ark. So now he's 600 years old when the flood waters was upon the earth. And Noah went in, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him into the ark, because of the waters of the flood, of clean beasts and of beasts that are not clean, and of fowls and of everything that creeps upon the earth. There went in 2 and 2 into Noah into the ark. So there's the generality, 2 and 2. We know there were some sevens, but it was 2 and 2 was the general. The male and the female as God had commanded Noah. Steve says, that's right. They were drinking, marrying, etc. Then boom. Exactly so. Exactly right. Matthew 24 and the parallels in Luke and Mark, they didn't have an idea at all. All of their thoughts were wicked. And my dad was fond of saying, when we were studying Olivet Discourse, my dad was fond of saying that, in the 100 years that Noah was trying to build the ark, if they ever knew, they would have tried to destroy it. We see sometimes in our children's literature when we're trying to teach Bible classes and stuff, you see all these people standing around pointing at the ark, laughing and stuff. Why are you building an ark, Noah? You're in the middle of dry land and all of that. And there's no indication that was what was happening. That's just an assumption on a lot of people's part. We don't have any indication of that, and we can't read into the text what isn't there. Steve, you're exactly right. They were eating and drinking, marrying, giving in marriage until the flood came and took them all away. So, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, I skipped verse 10. And it came to pass after 7 days that the waters of the flood were upon the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, And the second month, the 17th day of the month, the same day, were all of the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. So the fountains of the great deep. There's this idea that, and the evidence for this is I think, pretty obvious. There were waters trapped underneath the crust of the earth, way deep down. Remember, the whole planet had been water at one time. So you have a lot of water, but then the land came up out of it. And then I think that the opening up of the fountains of the deep, we have the Mariana Trench, I think, is exactly the evidence for that. You have this great, massive trench that's just super, super deep. We're talking over 10 kilometers deep. And all of this water comes gushing out of it. And the pressure is released, and it shoots up into the sky, and it breaks that canopy, and it says the windows of heaven were open. And I think that protective canopy got shattered. And so that's where the majority of the rain came from, was the vaporizing of this protective canopy. It's coming down, and it's filling up the earth with water. And let's see here. And the rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. So it rained. It took 40 days to rain. They were not in the ark for 40 days. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights. Hey, Brian, we're in Genesis 7. We're long about verse 13. In the selfsame day entered Noah and Shem and Ham and Japheth, the sons of Noah, and Noah's wife, or Mrs. Noah for some of us, and the 3 wives of his sons with them into the ark. Another thing that the Noah movie got wrong is here it talks about Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth being already married. They're going on the ark, and their 4 wives are going on the ark. And yeah, that's exactly right. And of course I speak in metric because I'm a physics guy, but Everest is only about 7 kilometers tall off the surface of the earth, and Mariana Trench is like 10.3 kilometers deep. So I make fun of Al Gore. That's how I know those numbers off the top of my head, is because I make fun of Al Gore every year. So anyway, the movie, and if you watch the movie Noah, you have Noah and his wife get on, and Japheth and Hermione Granger from Harry Potter gets on. That's Japheth's wife. But Ham and Shem don't have wives. They're not married when they get on the ark, which is exactly, there was a bunch of news, and everybody was like, oh, this is so in agreement with the Bible. This is exactly what the Bible has. We have these rock angel things, whatever that nonsense is. And then you have this idea that Shem and Ham aren't married when they get on, and then Japheth's wife somehow has twin daughters, and that ends up being the wives of Shem and Ham. They were just making stuff up, and it was so loosely tied to what we actually read from the Bible. It was bad. It was so bad. Anyway, so we see all 8 of these people get into the ark, and then you have God shuts up the ark. We'll get to that here in just a second. So in the selfsame day entered Noah and Shem and Ham and Japheth, the sons of Noah and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons with them into the ark, they and every beast after his kind, not species, kind, and all the cattle after their kind, not species, and every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth after his kind, not species, and every fowl after his kind, not species, every bird of every sort. Okay? And they went in unto Noah into the ark, 2 and 2 of all flesh, wherein is the breath of life. Okay? And they that went in, male and female of all flesh, as God had commanded him. And Jehovah, see, we have God here. God is the Elohim, and Jehovah shut him in. So again, I think you have the theophany, that is, God the Son is there, and he is the one that closes and protects the ark. He closes it up and gets man inside, because it's always Jesus that stands between our sin and our destruction and eternal life. See, Noah was righteous, and we read in 1 Peter 3:20 that 8 souls were saved by water. What were they saved from? They weren't saved from physical death. That was just a consequence. What were they saved from? They were saved from sin. They were saved from a wicked world. They were saved from that corruption that had happened to the rest of Seth's line. That's what they were saved from. What are we saved from by immersion in water? 1 Peter 3:21, the very next verse. The antitype of this flood that we're reading about right now, the antitype, water immersion, does also now save us. It's not the cleansing of filth from the body, but that which is demanded by our good conscience, our penitent heart, by the resurrection of Jesus Christ. See, there's Jesus there standing right next to us, saving us from sin. And that's what's happening here. Okay, verse 17, and the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased and bare up the ark, and it was lift up above the earth, and the waters prevailed and were increased greatly upon the earth, and the ark went upon the face of the waters, and the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. See, that's the whole heaven here. This isn't just a local flood. This is the whole heaven. And since this is the whole heaven, we're talking about the whole earth. This is a global flood. There's no way around that. Hey, Arthur, we're studying Genesis chapter 7 right now. We're in verse 19. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so there's no way that this is a local flood. This is a global flood. It says under the whole heaven. The idea here is the whole sky. And it says verse 20, 15 cubits upward. Now remember, these are giant cubits. Noah is a giant. Noah and his family are giants. That's the only way the giants could have made it to the other side of the flood. 15 Noah cubits upward. So we're talking close to 30 feet is where we're getting pretty close to here. 30 feet upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. Okay, so you got to think, you got this huge boat, and its draft is pretty deep because it's loaded down with food and all these animals, not to mention its most precious cargo, which is man. And so the water's got to go high enough that there's no way that ark's bottom scrapes the tops of these mountains. Just it's not good because it would break it open. And so the water had to be deeper than the draft of the ark, and so you're looking at a 30-foot thing. There's actually a safety investigation I was looking up on Answers in Genesis. They did a physics calculation. If you are into number crunching, you would love this. Safety investigation of Noah's Ark in a seaway, and they tested all kinds of different numbers, and they ran the length and the width and the depth, and they talked about structural safety and all of this. How high could the waves be before the ark was in trouble? I think they were talking somewhere close to the maximum was like 47 foot waves is what the ark could have handled. So crazy stuff on here. But if you have a mind, I'll try to remember to post it in the comments when we're done here. But it's a fascinating study for somebody like me who's a big nerd and likes all the numbers and physics and stuff. So, all right, 21. And all flesh died that moved upon the earth, both of fowl and of cattle and of beast, and of every creeping thing that crept upon the earth, and every man. That's all of the men, that's all of the women, that's all of the pregnant women, that's all the little bitty babies. Everything that wasn't on the ark died. Does that make God evil? No. God is creator. God has the authority to destroy that which he made. God could have completely and totally spoke everything back out of existence. God didn't. There's no way that he would do that, because he saw Noah and he saw righteousness, and he sees us and he loves us, and he provides in this example something of a lesson for us. God destroys sin. He destroys it here with the flood. I believe he destroys you'll see in 2 Peter 3, he destroys a second heavens and earth, which is people, again, with another flood, this time a flood of an army. And sin is destroyed, wickedness is always destroyed, and righteousness is left. I think that's what we see in all of that. When you get to Matthew 24 and you get to Luke 17 and Mark 13, you see that in the days of Noah, as Steve pointed out, men were eating and drinking and marrying and giving and marrying. And Matthew says until the flood came and took them all away. Took who away? Who did the flood take away? It took away the wicked people. Who was left? It was Noah and his family. Luke says until the flood came and destroyed them all. So there's the parallel there. The flood came and destroyed the wicked. The people who were left behind, Tim LaHaye and Jenkins, I forget his first name, they got it backwards. The people that were left behind were the righteous people in the days of Noah and in the days of Lot. The wicked were taken from the earth, were completely eradicated. All in whose nostrils was the breath of life of all that was in the dry land died. And every living substance was destroyed, which is upon the face of the ground, both man and cattle, and the creeping things, and the fowl of the heaven. And they were destroyed from the earth. And Noah only remained alive, and they that were with him in the ark. And the waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days. Steve says, AIG noted that if all the mountains were flattened and seafloors raised, there is enough water present on the earth to cover all the land up to nearly 3 kilometers. Yes. A lot of water. Whole lot of water. It reminds me, if you saw that one movie with Matthew McConaughey, I think it was called Interstellar. They go to that one planet where they land and the water is like really, really shallow. But then this huge tidal wave comes because the planet is completely flat. And so it's just a continuous tidal wave. I think there's a black hole that it's orbiting or some nonsense like that. And so as the planet rotates underneath the gravity well, this big giant tidal wave comes. Fascinating fiction. Absolutely silly in terms of physics, but whatever. Hey Jesse, glad you could catch us tonight. We are actually in Genesis. We're about to start Genesis chapter 8. We just finished with Genesis chapter 7, so now we're doing Genesis chapter 8. So thank you for joining us. And God, see, there's a reminder that this is the Creator. This is Elohim. Hi. This is the Creator God. This is the omnipotent ruler, the one that has authority over all of the earth. This is not Jehovah. This is not the personal God right now. This is also switching back and forth. If you've noticed that, Moses is switching back and forth between Elohim and Jehovah or Yahweh or however you want to pronounce it. You're going back and forth between this omnipotent Creator God and the personal named God that walked with man during the pre-flood time. And it's a reminder to the Israelites coming out of Egypt. You know, God is your personal God. He has selected you out to be a special people, and he will walk with you, and he will be Jehovah God to you. He will be your personal God to preserve you. But he is also an omnipotent, jealous, wrathful, just God. And if you mess up, and we see this in Leviticus 26, Deuteronomy 28, Deuteronomy 32, a number of different places, Moses tells them, if you do what God says, if you're righteous like Noah is righteous, God is going to bless you, and he's going to multiply you, and you are going to be an awesome nation in the world. But if you rebel against God and you turn against him, he is going to wipe you off the face of the earth, just like he did here. So that's what God's setting up right here. God is saying, you do it right, Noah. You do it wrong, you're like everybody else. And you're going to get wiped off the planet like everybody else. And that's eventually what happened, by the way. So, and God remembered Noah and every living thing and all the cattle that was with him in the ark. And God made a wind to pass over the earth. And the waters assuaged. That's a fun word. We should use that word more often. So we've got 40 days of rain, and then we've got 150 days that the waters are upon the earth. So we're at, 190 days here. We're approaching 1 year. The fountains also of the deep and the windows of heaven were stopped. I don't know if God shut them up miraculously or they just ran out of water. It's a finite amount. And the rain from heaven was restrained. And the waters returned from off of the earth continually. And after the end of the 150 days, the waters were abated. And the ark rested in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, upon the mountains of Ararat. So, see if we do our calculations. I believe it's the 2nd month. Where is it at? I'll do a search here. Second month of the 17th day of the month. So halfway through. So we're looking at 7th month and 17th day of the month. So that's exactly 5 months. So the 40. That means the 40 days of rain were included in the 150 days. The mighty wind, Spirit of God, passing across. That's a great point, Brian. Genesis 1:1, the Spirit of God, and then 8:1, this idea of the great wind, Holy Spirit here. I have no problems with that whatsoever. That is a great observation. Thank you for making that. And so rains for 40 days, and then I guess there's another 110 days if you do the math right, where they're waiting for the waters to kind of recede and go back. So 17th day of the month, which is exactly 5 months later, rested upon the mountains, plural, of Ararat. A lot of people looking for the ark keep looking for, there's a Mount Ararat, that's a modern day Mount Ararat, and they haven't ever found anything. So there's a lot of skeptics going, see, no Noah, no flood or whatever. And it says the mountains of Ararat, it's plural. So that's probably a mountain range somewhere, and we're not really sure what that's at. Yeah, Steve, that's where I've heard that a lot too. But we can do the calculations here, see if we get to 365. So 150 days. Verse 5, and the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. So, I mean, we're getting pretty close to, let's see, what is that, 8 months now? In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, were the tops of the mountains seen. So the mountains are kind of peaking above the water. And it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark that he had made, and he sent forth a raven, which went forth to and fro until the waters were dried up from off the earth. So the raven goes out and doesn't come back. Of course, there's mountain peaks that it can land on and rest. It doesn't need to come back. But the raven, if you've ever seen ravens, they'll go out into a field and they'll land on the ground and pick at the corn and stuff. Also, Noah, sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters were abated from off the face of the ground. That's like the surface down where everybody wants to be. But the dove found no rest for the sole of her foot, because the dove was going to want to land in a tree. Returned unto him into the ark, for the waters were on the face of the whole earth. So mountains are peeking out, but still don't have the ground down below. Then he put forth his hand, and he took her, and he pulled her in unto him into the ark, and he stayed yet another 7 days. And again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came in to him in the evening, and in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. So the trees are starting to show above. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from off of the earth, and he stayed yet another 7 days, and sent forth the dove, which returned not again unto him anymore. So you got 10th month, so that's about 8 months that they're here in the ark. And then he waits another 40 days, so that's 11 months and a week that we're looking at here. And then he stays for 2 more weeks waiting for this. So we're getting really close, like right at a year that they're in the ark. Verse 12. Let's see here. Oh, no, I already read that. And verse 13. And it came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month. So we're like, the first day of the month, the waters were dried up from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. And in the 2nd month, see, remember, we started in the 2nd month, and the 17th day, In the second month, on the 7th and 20th day of the month, was the earth dried. So there's your math. So second month, we're in day 27 of the month, so 10 days after. So it's like 300 and what we would think of as 375 days, I guess. Hebrews calculated a little bit different. They only did 30 month days straight up. And so we're looking at 360, so 370 days, a year either way. So, hey Gant, we're in Genesis chapter 8, verse 14 right now. So, yeah, exactly so. So just a little bit over a year. And God spake unto Noah, saying, Go forth of the ark, you and your wife, and your sons and your sons' wives with thee. So see, they're married when they get off the ark. They're married when they get on the ark. They're married when they get off the ark. That's not how it happened in the movie. So the movie got that wrong. Bring forth with you every living thing that is with you, of all flesh, both of fowl and of cattle, and of every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth, that they may breed abundantly in the earth, and be fruitful and multiply on the earth. Okay, so he brings 2 of every kind for the purposes of breeding. And one of the big things that the skeptics will say is, well, have you ever seen elephants? You know, you keep arguing there's big dinosaurs on the ark and all of this. Have you ever seen how big these creatures are? Well, what if they were the young? You know, Noah's about to start sacrificing some animals here. Do we see throughout the law of Moses that they sacrificed adults? Or do they sacrifice the firstlings of the flock? The young, the calves? You know, the innocent animals, if you will. So if all the animals that they take onto the ark are kind, not species, are young, not adult, you have less space, less mass, less food, and then a longer lifespan for reproduction. All of that makes perfect sense. No problems whatsoever. And Noah builded an altar unto Jehovah. So we're back to the personal God here now. So God, and then all of a sudden Noah is building an altar unto Jehovah, and he took of every clean beast. Again, I don't know that Noah knows that these are clean. I know that Moses is stating that they are clean. It could very well have logically been that Noah said, well, you know, I'm not going to take those that there were only 2 of, because then there wouldn't be any reproduction going on. So I'm going to take some of these that God brought 7 of, and I'm going to sacrifice a couple of those, because that makes more sense. Hey, Roger, welcome aboard. We're about to wrap up Genesis chapter 8 here. So he took of every clean beast, of every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. Man, he took one of every kind that there were 7 of. You think maybe he worshiped God for a little bit more than an hour, 2 hours when he got off that ark? God always works in an efficient and orderly manner. Yes, he does. Totally, purely logical being. And I'm just amazed at reading this. Noah took every clean beast, every clean bird, and he offered them on the altar. Man, that's a lot of worshiping God. And you can imagine his mind. You know, the estimates are that there were like 1.8 billion people on the planet at this point, given the population growth and how they had big families and they had long lifespans. They calculated that there was about 1.8 billion people is what I've heard. And now there's only 8. And Noah is just overwhelmed by this, that his righteousness was rewarded, that he's kind of restarting man, and he has this opportunity to the second chance to get it right and to teach. So the first thing he does when he gets off the ark is he spends all of this time worshiping God, talking about the sacrifice, pointing to Christ that would come. Whether Noah knew that or not, that's what the sacrifices were for. God called for the sacrifices to point to his son. Thanks, Gant. Steve says, unlike men who is often wasteful and just, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely would have taken a while. Oh my gosh, Stephen, no, Noah had a 20-minute sermon and a closing song and prayer. You know, one of the longest sermons I ever heard was by Bert Thompson. He was doing one of his apologetics things he was there at Brown Trail, Steve. And he went on, like he spoke, I think, for like 2 hours. And it felt like it was 20 minutes. And when he got to the point where it was wrapping up, you were like, no, keep going. Why are you stopping? Because you just wanted him to keep going. You just wanted to, and then the line to talk to him and ask questions. In fact, one of the question that I had for him, I went up and talked to him, was about the tree of life and death before. And he told me, he's like, yeah, I used to hold to that there was no physical death before the flood, or before the fall of man. He's like, I don't hold that position anymore. So, you know, can you imagine wanting to worship God so much that you just spent days and days and days doing that? And we get caught so much up into our physical lives, and we get so wrapped up into what's going on now, the things that ultimately don't matter, like the line of Cain, getting wrapped up in the physical things and the things that don't matter, and it drew them away from Jehovah, who was walking among them. And we have to take a look at ourselves, and we have to wonder, where are our priorities? How is it possible to get back to the righteousness of Noah, to the righteousness of Enoch? Can we get rid of all of the things in our lives that are really not important at all? And can we focus daily on God? It's one of the reasons I wanted to start doing these live videos and studying with you folks, is because, this is helping me get back into a daily study, and it's not just this. I get on and I talk to people online, or, my children ask me questions and stuff, and I'm wanting to get back to this idea of just really digging into the Word and really studying with anybody who's willing to study with me. I feel that fire lit again, like Jeremiah talked about, the fire in his bones. And so I really appreciate you guys coming on board and talking with me and posting up. Agree or disagree, we can hash it out. We can hash it out in love and with grace towards one another, and we can talk about this stuff. But it's awesome to be able to focus daily on God like this. And it's just an amazing thing. Let's finish up here. Verse 21, and Jehovah smelled. See, here we're back to Jehovah, back to the personal Lord here. And Jehovah smelled a sweet savor. And Jehovah said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more everything living as I have done. Now, that's an interesting, as the King James is, whatever. So here Jehovah is smelling the sweet savor, whether real or whether it's just he's observing Noah's worship, and it's a great thing. He says, I am not going to curse the ground anymore because of man. Okay, remember, after Adam got out of Eden, the ground was cursed. God's lifting the curse. Okay, there's no more curse of the ground. Still got to till it, still got to work it. Okay, but it's not as hard because that curse is gone. And he says, I'm not going to curse it because of the imagination. I believe this is not a statement of fact of what man is like, I believe this is God saying, I'm not going to curse the ground anymore because of man's wickedness. Like this whole thought is one thought that goes together. So I will not again curse the ground anymore for man's sake, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more every living thing as I have done. So God's not going to do a worldwide thing. There's not going to be another reset in the physical sense. There is no more worldwide flood. We're not going to see a worldwide destruction of mankind and a starting over. This is it. Oh man, we need to talk about that. I was there as a babe in Christ. Yeah, definitely. That's why I started a YouTube channel. I want to begin making a ton of videos to share. You know, I've been a teacher now for this is my 13th year. This is the end of my 13th year. Been a physics teacher. I've been teaching Bible classes on and off since I was 14 years old. And there's an axiom that is so true, Steve, that you learn more as a teacher than you ever do as the students. And I have observed that my whole life, my whole Christian life, especially. The idea that me getting up in front of people and having to know this well enough to be able to tell other people, whether it's Bible or physics or math or whatever, to have to know it that well, and then to get up here and to speak about it and to interact, and then people like Brian and you and Gant and whoever else joins and comments. My brothers were a big part of this. My dad was a big part of this. To be able to talk it out, you learn so much. And so I would encourage anybody, start your own personal commentary. You don't have to ever publish it. It doesn't have to be seen by anybody, but write your own personal commentary, verse by verse. And you'll be surprised how much you learn and how much you'll have to go back and fix. Because as you're going through verse by verse, having to write it down and really dig into it to understand it, you'll find that the Bible throws something at you that changes your understanding of something elsewhere. We did that with the Olivet Discourse. We were looking at that division there, Matthew. The TV went off. I'm talking too long, not moving anything. That division there that a lot of people put at verse 36. We looked at that and we thought the same thing, and then we kept reading Luke's account and Mark's account, and Mark does a really good job of throwing you a curve in that passage in the Olivet, because in Matthew it looks like a clear cut destruction of the temple, and then verse 36, but in that day and hour knoweth no man, and then you're like, okay, now we're talking about the end of the world, and then you talk about judgment, you talk about the talents, and you talk about all of the things that people typically talk about as the end of time. And when you read Mark, he just goes back and forth, like over and over again. You're like, okay, are we talking about the temple now? Are we talking about the end of the world? Are we talking about the temple? And that's when we realized there's no transition at all. The Olivet Discourse is all the end of Judaism. It's all the end of the Jewish state, destruction of Jerusalem, destruction of the temple. Every bit of it. There is no back and forth in Mark. It's the same context. And then we got to looking closer and we realized, hey, in Matthew and Mark and Luke, when it talks about the ones that will be taken and ones that will be left behind, look at that closer. It isn't the righteous that are taken, like the millennialists believe. It's the wicked that are taken. The wicked are destroyed, and the righteous are left behind. And then when you get to the talents, God doesn't give those people rest. At the end, in Matthew 25, when he talks about the parable of the talents, the 5 talents, the 3 talents, and the 1 talent, he doesn't give them rest. When the Lord comes back, he tells the guy with 5 talents, you've been faithful with a little bit, here's some more responsibility. Work harder. Oh, you've been faithful with a little bit of stuff, here's some more work. Work harder. Oh, I gave you 1 talent and you buried it and you didn't do anything with it? You don't get anything. You don't get any part, no work, nothing. You're cut off from the kingdom. And see, that's what this study does. Is you just start to read, and it forces you to constantly reevaluate and challenge everything that you've ever been taught until your faith becomes your own, and you're able to stand on your own with just the Bible, you and God talking, because that's what the Bible is God, the mind of God revealed to mankind. And so this is God talking to us. Everybody talks about the Holy Spirit working in us and talking to me, and I hear this still small voice and all this. No, that's not how it works. That age is past. We've got the Bible, and it's better. And we read the Bible, we are seeing the mind of God, and we're in it, and we're studying it, and we're growing every day. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. While the earth remains. See, there's a conditional statement. The earth's not always going to remain. We see in 1 John 2:17 that the earth is passing away. That's entropy. The universe was designed with the wearing down, with death in mind. The physical life. This is a temporary place. It always has been. It was always going to be a temporary place. But while the earth is still here, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. Take that, global warming people. Right? See, God's got it. He designed the earth to take care of itself. There's nothing we're going to do that's going to mess that up. But this is what having a relationship with Jehovah is like. He created. Hey, a little bit. Okay, I'll check it in just a second. All right, I'm almost done. I'll check it. But this is what it's like to have a relationship with God, with Jehovah. He is creator, omnipotent, and full of wrath. But he's also personal God, and he provides. And that providence is powerful. God is powerful enough that he doesn't have to use miracles anymore. Miracles were children's toys, according to Paul. God designed a world and he's powerful enough to have designed that world to provide everything that we needed. And he gave us a Bible. He wrote a book that was powerful enough to give us everything that we needed. We don't need church tradition. We don't need men with big heads, arrogance coming in and trying to tell us how we ought to do things. We have this that God is communicating to us. And if we do what he says, 2 Timothy 2:15, study to show ourselves approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of God, then the Bible is all sufficient. Paul says a little bit later, 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17. All scripture is given by inspiration of God, that the man of God may be complete, thoroughly furnished unto every good work. This is God talking to us. I don't need somebody else. I don't need a pope. I don't need a bishop. I don't need a priest or some kind of clergy. This is God. This is Jehovah. This is man, or this is Jehovah walking among man now, communicating to us directly in a providential way, in a non-miraculous way, and it's all we need. It's all that we will ever need at this point. So anyway, those are my thoughts. I gotta do some tech support here for the little one. We're about to head to bed here in about 15 minutes. Anyway, thank you all for joining me. I hope tonight was edifying, and we will see you guys probably tomorrow for Genesis chapter 9.